Hey guys, it is 420 somewhere, and today we're going to talk about overdoses and then Thailand. So we'll start off with the bleakest news of today, or of the week, I guess. The CDC has reported the preliminary numbers of the amount of overdose deaths of 2021, and it is unfortunately continuing the trend upward that has been the case since the 1970s. So every year since the 1970s, there has been more overdose deaths from the previous year, except for the year 2018, strangely enough. But 2021 saw the most overdose deaths ever recorded, which was at 108,000 people dying of drug overdoses in America, which is an extremely huge number. It's very disheartening to hear. This is the second year in a row that that deaths have passed 100,000. Last year, or 2020, was the first year where 100,000 was passed, and that year there was a huge jump from the year before, and most people thought it was because of the pandemic, and it was because of the pandemic. There was it was like about a 50% increase, or maybe a 30%, that could be wrong. Yeah, there was a 30% increase from 2019, and everyone was like, well, that's the pandemic. People are now kind of thrust indoors, and they don't have this ability to be social or to go to resources that they need for drug treatment. But the fact that it's continuing up, and then this year was another 15% increase from 2020, shows that it's not slowing down anytime soon. 2021, I guess, still was technically a pandemic year, but not anywhere near the extent of 2020. So yeah, the 2021 data, all that it's doing is showing us that it's not just an anomaly of 2020 being this year where a bunch of overdose deaths were happening. It's still going up, and we may see even more this year when all is said and done. And again, in the data, we're seeing fentanyl get an even bigger hold of the deaths happening. So fentanyl is now become almost a part of every single pill that you're finding on the streets. It is a big part of methamphetamine that you're finding on the streets. It's of course a big part of heroin that you're finding on the streets. It's all coming from Mexico. That was pre-chemicalized compounds from China that went to Mexico, are being built in Mexico, and then coming into the US through Mexico. That's mostly how we're getting all the fentanyl in the country, and it is doing a number on this country, and it's continuing to do more and more each year. And that's where we are with that. These are preliminary numbers, so they're going to probably change just a little bit, but it's safe to say that 108,000 is kind of around where we are this year, or 2021. Okay, let's get back to marijuana, because marijuana is a kind of a lighter subject after that. Thailand is doing something weird with their marijuana. They are, in 2019, I believe, they legalized medical marijuana for the first time. However, they still have very, very harsh punishments for high THC level marijuana recreationally. And that is kind of going head to head with new things that they're trying to do. They're trying to basically be the first Southeast Asian marijuana hub in the world. And their way of doing that is to give out 1 million marijuana plants for people to grow on their own without any government oversight. And their hope is to then get this kind of big medical marijuana business rolling in the country, and then tourists can come in and get medical marijuana. But at the same time, they have very, very harsh punishments still for tourists who have high THC levels in their marijuana. For instance, I think you can potentially face up to 15 years in prison if you're caught with possession of marijuana as a tourist, which this is according to the New York Times, and that's a crazy number if that is true. But it's also not unheard of in the area. Singapore also has extremely harsh punishment, up to 20 years in prison if you're found in possession of high THC level marijuana, and if you're found trafficking, that can be punishable by death. So they do not fool around with marijuana in this area. So the fact that Thailand is giving away 1 million plants, 1 million marijuana plants to their citizens, is a huge step in a very different direction than we typically see in the area. So we should see this start happening next month. They're gonna start giving away these plants next month. And then, Thailand may be kind of more and more lax as long as this works out in their favor, as long as voters like this, as long as this is something that they clearly want more of. So yeah, I found that interesting. It is not New Music Friday because that's tomorrow. However, it's a huge New Music Friday because we have Kendrick Lamar coming back to the scene. He is releasing his album called Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers. This is maybe one of the first times I said it out loud. And it is so hyped at this point. The anticipation is gigantic because his level of expectation is to the point where he is expected to make a game-changing album every time he releases something. The expectations for that have got to be so paralyzing, yet he typically delivers, which is crazy. And this album is coming out midnight tonight. We have heard no song from it except for a teaser song called The Heart Part 5, which in and of itself was just incredible, an instant classic from Kendrick. So this album is basically overshadowing every other album that's coming out tomorrow, which there are some. There's Kevin Morby's new album. There is a Black Keys new album. Oh, and the Radiohead spin-off band, The Smile, has a new album coming out tomorrow. But none of that matters because Kendrick Lamar is releasing Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers. And I suggest everyone go listen to it because it's going to be the talk of the town for at least the next few weeks. So this is an exciting moment. And that's the big release tomorrow. So check it out. And that's it for today. We'll be back next week with what we think of the album and more stories. So see you then.